All right, well, thank you all for coming today. Really appreciate it. This is kind of a trial run of Active Teaching Lab. So like I was kind of talking about before, each week we have a different instructor at UW-Milwaukee and here at UW-Milwaukee at Waukesha. I think I got the name right. Talk about something that they're doing in campus, something they're teaching, some kind of cool thing that they're style they're teaching or pedagogy or a cool way of using a technology. And then we talk about how you can do that. And so we're kind of focusing on Canvas now, but this kind of next semester we'll be focusing on Canvas, but right now we're going to talk a little bit about what Ellen is doing in D2L, but then a lot of that stuff can be carried over into Canvas, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. So I'm just going to do just a brief introduction though, and Ellen Len is professor of English here at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee at Waukesha. She earned her MA in English at Northeastern University and her PhD in English at New York University. And her publications include her 2015 co-authored work, The Work, Family Debate in Popular Culture, and her forthcoming book with Rutgers University Press, Gray Matters, Finding Meaning in the Stories of Later Life. She currently teaches a variety of courses, including Midwestern Literature, American Women Novelists, and Women in Pop Culture. And she will share with us today her work to foster engaged and collaborative peer learning with her courses. Welcome very much, Professor.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming today, and I'm excited that CETL gave the opportunity to show something from what's happening at one of the branch campuses and to integrate it. So I was really excited when the opportunity came up. So when we were talking about possibilities of something that is happening in the classroom, one of the things that Lane and I talked about is that generally people talk about, well, what's sort of a problem that you're having or an issue, and then what did you do to come up with some solutions and how did it come out? And so that's sort of what I followed. And one of the things that I wanted to focus on is how to have a classroom feel more like a community, like people working together as opposed to individuals or little pods of people, and how to make that connection. And so I'm going to refer back to this. These are some, it's a current class that I'm doing. It's a gender studies class called Women in Popular Culture. And so these are some of my students on the front here. This is something that they created in class, and I'm going to refer back to it later as a sign for me of some progress and development in my class. So first, I want to talk about, potential problem. And this wasn't a serious problem. There wasn't, the students' anarchy, it wasn't like things like that. But it was a sort of a strange dynamic in the class. First of all, I had a few male students at the very beginning of the semester. First day, they fled, because there were over like 30 women in the class. And so, I don't know, they just were not comfortable with the dynamic. So it's all women, and you think, well, okay, that might just be a nice, cozy environment. But it wasn't. It felt like people were off in their own little pockets, and I didn't get a good feeling about the whole class. If people talked, they were usually talking just to the person right next to them, and I didn't feel as if there was sort of energy radiating throughout the room. And so, and the part of the problem, because I'm obviously not a social director, like trying to have my class be sociable, but I think the problem was I felt like they're not learning enough from each other, that they're only, when I give an assignment, they'd work with group assignment, they work just with the people there, or there wasn't enough happening where they realized that there's other people in the room that may be of interest and may have ideas. So I just didn't feel there's enough cross-pollination of ideas going on in the room. So two different sources helped influence me with my intervention or with what I decided to do. The first was a few years back, we had a reading group on campus of the book by James Lane called Small Teaching. And there was a lot of things that I took from it, but one of the things that he really emphasized is that doing a lot of collaborative activities in the classroom, that it tends to revitalize, puts that energy back in, and even inject fun into learning. So I know that word fun is sort of problematic for some people because we feel like this is not a circus, we're not supposed to be fun. But it also, I mean, we do want there to be people think about us in terms of like why we've gone with our fields and our professions. Like at some point we thought this was fun. This was, whether it been the research part of it or the experiments or what we did, we had that fun. And so I wanted that element to be for the students as well. Lang had a couple of other things that I also had in the back of my mind. One is he talks about prior knowledge, about students being able to bring in some prior knowledge, that being important for them feeling as if they belong there, that they have something important to contribute. And he also talks a lot about the emotion in the classroom. And I just, I guess, never heard anybody else really talk about that element, that they're, wanting it to create a sort of social environment for students to learn from each other. And so just thinking about like how to create emotion. He talks about finding way to get students motivated. The other thing that I read right before the semester that really influenced me, so just as the semester was beginning, there was an article in Politico called "The Unseen Reason Working Class Students Drop Out." And it was really fascinating, where it was written by a professor from Northwestern and a professor from USC. And they studied taking away some of the elements about, prior learning. One of the things they talked about is that the university tends to be very individual centered in terms of accomplishing as an individual. Like you need to go ahead, forge out, make success for yourself. And that for a lot of students, particularly ones from working class backgrounds, they come from a more communal sense of learning, that it's not about like what you can achieve, but it's like your community, and that's how they learn. And when they've done studies where learning was more collaborative, or the word that is used in the article is interdependent, that students actually outperform people from lower socioeconomic, outperformed their peers when they were given an opportunity for types of work that they could work together and collaborate. So taking all of that, putting that into my head, in this class that we have, it's called the Women in Popular Culture, we had just finished a unit in music. So we look at different subject matters, one on television, technology, sports, advertising. And so we finished the music unit, and I wanted to come up with, figure out a way to make a collaborative activity, to have them learn from each other, make it fun, things like that. And so I designed this feminist bingo sheet that hopefully you got a copy of. And some of the things that I kept in mind with it, one was like an important component was that people had to information trade, that it wasn't about just like, see how you can achieve. I mean, there was a prize. I did give like an iTunes gift card for the winner. And then second place, Cardi B was on Vogue magazine, and I gave that as second place. So there were prizes for the winner. But the idea was that like nobody could do it by themselves. Like nobody could get bingo if they just sat there and did it. And I did let them use their phone because I felt like that's fun to be able to told that you could use your phone, but you could only use your phone once. So there was that element that people liked it. But mostly they had to like trade information. And then also though, there was like course content in it and so those who have been keeping up with the readings, coming to class, doing it, they were definitely at an advantage, but they could also share that knowledge with others. So just looking at the feminist bingo sheet for a second. So one of the squares had a song, has their own record label or has a song that takes on social issues. One of the chapters we talked about had Annie DeFranco, who when she was dissatisfied with the music industry, came up with her own record label. So for those who have done the things like that, great. Also, we saw a documentary called Dream World. So video for the song is creative and it rejects the dream world idea. if you like weren't in class, you didn't come, you have no idea what you're talking about. But those who did could and come up with something and pool their knowledge. Some of the others were just terms, so it was also review for the class. So the covers of their CDs are not catered to the male gaze, shows gender fluidity. So this isn't just an activity of like, let's play bingo. You know, it was a way to like also remind people of class concepts, finding examples that would help prove it and things like that. So, so that's what I did. It basically said, you know, originally I thought they had to fill the whole card, but that was not happening really with quite regularly. But the nice thing of, oh, I guess I'll go to my next slide of the outcomes. So one of the things that I did see happening was that people left their seats and they like actually walked across the room and talked to individuals who they had never spoken to all semester long, and they exchanged information. You see part of the, on the handout, it says like the best thing to do is to barter. Like you tell me, I'll tell you a piece of information, you tell me, things like that. So, so that was one sign that there was like a positive development. The second one was, I mentioned that Lang talked about in the small teaching, is about like bringing emotion into the classroom. And you could tell in that day when they were doing, there was energy in the classroom. They were not just sort of like passive receptacles. They were like, had to go, in order to get the prize, they had to secure information. So people were definitely trying hard. Nobody just sort of sat there and like, I give up. Like everybody was, there was motivation, that thing that that Lang also talked about. So there was a reason to try hard and get this. So then, you know, that was what was happening in that particular class. But one of the things that I've noticed since then about how things have shifted is that people moved where they sat as the class, and their different relationships developed over the course. And it wasn't immediate. It wasn't like we came the next day and people immediately like, oh, now you helped me with bingo, so like, let's be friends. It wasn't like that. It was more gradual. But I did see people like breaking down the pods of like where they only would talk to one person, and different relationships develop. And one of the like probably most exciting for me moments that felt as if there was a breakthrough in terms of how the class collaborated and worked from each other was a few weeks later, we were on a unit, we were doing an advertising unit, and the final assignment for that one, and I guess I like to do that for the end of the units, is to have there be some collaborative group activity, usually if possible with some creativity. So they had to change an ad. So either a commercial that was like very, did not have good gender representation, or a print ad, and they had to change it in a way. So they could either film an ad, redo it, showing the old one and the new, or brought in marker. I gave them all possibilities, but they had to do it in class, like change an ad. And one of the things that one of the groups of students did was they decided to do just sort of a PSA about appearance. And that was this ad that I passed out to you, this one on beauty. And what was so remarkable to me about doing that is that not only was the group formed from people who do not normally sit together, but they actually went up to different people in the class and had them take pictures to integrate into their ad that they then use. So these people here were from all over the classroom, but they felt comfortable enough to ask them to participate in their ad, take pictures, use them, and integrated it into their assignment. And to me, that was like a dramatic breakthrough from what you know, what I had witnessed earlier on. And then just kind of one other final wrap up that I wanted to mention in terms of like the outcomes that I noticed is that in the article that I mentioned, the Politico ad about the unseen reason working class students drop out, you know, when people have studied tremendous amount of attrition rates, particularly of working class students, one of the things that's interesting about this class is that of the 31 students after that first day where I lost my male students, nobody has dropped. So people have had all kinds of personal struggles and things like that. But the students, like all 31 are still hanging in there and we haven't lost anybody. And I do think that part of it does come from integrating more of these collaborative exercises where they have to help each other, learn from each other, and it's not being the emphasis about you alone and, you know, your work is being valued. Cool.
Did you have anything else?
No, that's where I was going to stop it, and I didn't know if there were questions.
Do you have any questions? So I have a question. How does this compare to the similar courses where maybe you haven't done that? What is that? How do you think this compares? Do you think this had an impact like that you could see that you would replicate this again and you'd see similar outcomes from doing this type of activity?
I do think so. I mean, I think that I think first of all, just having some creative. It's interesting. I have been increasingly incorporating creative assignments as an option for students because I think we forget about that. We always just think about in terms of like, show me what you learned, but like offering them the opportunity to do creativity. But I think what's different about it is that this now is a reminder, like, I've got to have creativity on my part too. Like, I can't just say like, okay, and your creative option, like for the Jill and I teach a class in children's literature. So one of their options is to create a children's book and to say how they were influenced by that or to write a young adult chapter. So rather than just showing creativity, it's like sort of modeling it in assignment making, showing that same creativity. So I think that it's something that I would want to do more because I've had semesters where the whole semester went and I felt like there was no energy or chemistry in the room. And I would try to do something like, okay, 1, 2, 3, call out and join groups with different people. And it would go, they would talk with those people that day, but there was no way it changed the whole dynamic of the classroom. So I think it has to be where they work on something together and not just in a short assignment. It has to be something that a more prolonged engagement.
How prolonged is it?
Well, this I gave most of the class to it. So we may have done, so it's a 75-minute class. There may have been some review of it, but I think this was 45 minutes. But in some ways it was review, which I never do a review of until the end of the semester, final review. And oftentimes students are scared. They're like, we're going to have to be responsible in the final for all the material, but this is sort of like a review for that unit, which is something that I think is useful to incorporate. It's like a fun way, but it's a useful way to review a lot of what we've been talking about. So yeah, I think I gave, at least 3/4 of a class to this. And then, it took the whole time.
Early in the semester?
This was about maybe 4 or 5 weeks in.
You got this classic problem with group projects, right? And so then if you have like a significant term project based on groups, and then, duos are particularly problematic. One person vanishes, and the next thing you know, the one person's sitting there without any help.
Right. And yeah, this is, I think we're all good about recognizing the importance of group work. And I think that most of our colleagues, we do some group work. And this is I guess, to see a little bit different than group work because there's a independent motivation, like, can I get the prize? But then it's also the sharing of knowledge, reviewing material with each other. So it's a little bit different in that, I think some groups are really successful, some groups are not. And this is people have motivation to get the knowledge, but they are, it just breaks a barrier that our students have. And, I see so many of our students who are solitary, who are alone. They sit in the cafeteria by themselves. They saw a student right out there in the gaming thing, just sitting by themselves. And so, I like the fact that somebody gets talked to, that student gets talked to, and not just because they were forced to be put into a group, but somebody thought, what do you have for that? There's a way in which they are encouraged to have some social interaction because they have valuable knowledge. So, yeah.
Did you feel that it improved the daily attendance as well? You know, like not just not dropping, but this, you know, I'm teaching a 102 class right now, and some kids are always there, but then there's this core group that, like, one kid has missed 8 classes in a row.
Right. You know, I think that I don't think that it remedies that. I'm a quizzer. I have writing every single day of my classes on the reading every single day. So so that is why my students come, because it's like lost opportunity. You know, they really, those who care at all about their grade are, you know, don't feel it's too much jeopardy if they don't. But one of the things that I think that indirectly, I remember on the teaching evaluation comment someone did, I think it was last year, and it hurt my heart, but it was like one of those ones where like, okay, tough love, I need to know this. They said every class was the same. You know, which meant like it started with a reading quiz, and then I went over it, and then there was group activity and things like that. And so one of the things that I feel like, and that may, sometimes students don't come, like maybe for boredom, like, oh, this is gonna be things like that. And so one of the ways that I do, like they didn't even know this was happening. They just came to class and like, okay, so here's the iTunes gift card, here's the Cardi B bow, we're having a something today. And so they now, like, that kind of thing can happen. The same day when we did the ads, where like I came with my big thing of markers and you know, all my art supplies and things like that. They, you know, they didn't really, so I feel that does add a little bit more motivation to know that there's a certain degree of spontaneity, and that they could miss something fun if they don't come. So, you know, I think the reading quizzes, the daily reading quizzes help with the attendance, but I think this is perhaps cuts off some of the, oh, it's gonna, you know, not the idea of this is gonna be the same every single class. Good question.
Did you do any other games besides the bingo?
Well, the semester's still go. Yeah, this is the only one that, I mean, you know, but I have done a few other just like breaking things out of the box. With all the snow days that we had early on, I didn't know how to, like, what to do with so much missed content. So one of them, we were reading essays, scholarly essays on the television show Orange is the New Black. And so we missed one. So I had the class like read one, and then I divided them up in half, and they had to teach the other class, they had to teach the other half of the class. And I brought in a huge sheet of the block paper, or the butch paper, and they had to find like both a visual way to like teach the other half of the class their article than the other. And so, yeah, so I haven't had another game per se, but I do seem to be experimenting with this class, a lot of different ways to be the same class each time. You know, I brought in a guest lecture because that was a recommendation to me too that had been made in student comments, like, why don't we have a guest lecture? So we just finished the technology unit, but so yeah, but the assignments are also, as I said, they are in line in that they're creative. So with our technology unit, one of their options is to create a video game, like a new game that breaks some of the problems we've seen in the different readings and documentaries we've done on women in technology. So they have to like both, how are they fixing the problems that were done, but they have the option of like making their own video game. And so, you know, everything from the visuals of it to you know, how they're going to market it because of our advertising and things like that. So there are other creative assignments that I'm trying to throw their way to see if that kind of keeps the level of engagement.
Awesome. I have one other question for you. You just mentioned that at the beginning that you know, get your information or your ideas for you know, from Lang. From the reading program, what other resources do you use to kind of think of new ideas or cook up new ideas for your class or for ways you approach teaching?
Right. Well, I mean, I have found those reading circles to be really useful because, you know, whenever I do like pleasure reading, I, being the English professor, I constantly have a novel in my hand, so it's hard for me to read like pedagogy necessarily, but I feel that the reading circles, every time they've been offered, I signed up for those because that's a way to, I think it's a more interesting way to do it, to discuss ideas with other colleagues and see what so we've done a lot. You know, we did the one on mindset, which was really interesting. We've done one on like engaging ideas by John Bean. So I think whenever those come up, and then, you know, I mean, one of the things I'm trying to pay more attention to now is articles on Twitter. I believe that the Politico, the article that I mentioned that influenced me on why working class students drop out, that I believe came from Twitter. So I'm just trying to follow more educators and more education sites, because it seems to be like one of the best ways to get new research, new feeds is actually through Twitter, which is just funny to me because originally when Twitter was introduced, I always thought of it as being just, you know, one line. I'm like, why would anyone sign up for Twitter? It just, you know, I always thought of it as the tweet being the significant part, and I thought it's so insubstantial. Like, why would anyone like get anything from Twitter? But now, as I've kind of come back to it, I realize that the passing along of articles and information and ideas it's really rich for that, and it's more kind of cutting edge than any of the other news sources that I usually go to.
Very good. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming here.